Hi, and welcome to Go Be Radiant. My name is Susie, and I am so glad that you decided to join me today. Well, I would say that leadership is a lot like parenthood. You don't know exactly what you're signing up for until you're right smack dab in the middle of it and you realize you have no idea what you're doing. I'm sure that's not true for most leaders, but it has been for me at different times in my life. Leadership is a topic that I'm very passionate about. And this blog post and this blog series that I'm going to be doing on leadership is inspired by a recent leadership flub. There was just a situation that I definitely could have handled better, and I was not as radiant as I would have liked to have been. Let's just put it that way, putting it a little mildly, but you get the idea. So I did a lot of self reflecting, and I went back into scripture and I looked at some leadership examples, and I thought, you know what, I want to share this on the blog. And this has actually been a topic that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. Because as we talk about the idea of being radiant in our everyday lives, leadership is actually part of our everyday lives. Now wait, before you are tempted to turn off this video because you think you're not a leader, hang with me just a little bit longer, because we are going to be talking about different definitions of leadership, and you might be surprised to find that you are indeed a leader. So for this series, we are going to talk about some different definitions, and then we'll look at some different biblical examples in the coming weeks. So we'll look at people like Deborah, who was a judge. We'll look at people like Moses and Joshua and David. And I think there is so much that we can glean from them. I'm really excited about this series. But before we dive into all the details, I want to start with the question, what is leadership? I was asked that question in a job interview, and it's the kind of thing where you think, well, yeah, that would be easy to answer. It should just roll off my tongue. And yet I found myself at a loss for words. I didn't know what to say. I guess I was a little caught off guard. Well, since then, I've done quite a bit of studying on leadership, and I've had the privilege of going to some amazing conferences and hearing just having heard some amazing speakers on the topic of leadership. And hopefully I can sprinkle that, some of those learnings I can share with you as we dive into this series. So, what is leadership? That is the question. Some people would say that leadership is moving people from here to there. So you start off by explaining or by helping people see and understand why they can't stay here. And then you cast the vision for there. And it's the process of moving those people from here to there. So in many ways, it would be, guiding and directing people through change, perhaps, or to a different, who knows, a different vision or a different outcome, a different whatever. But for whatever reason, they can't stay here. And so leadership is helping them move to a different place. Now, you probably heard me use the words guiding and directing. That would be another definition that some might say of leadership, that it's just about guiding people, it's about directing people, and that makes sense, right? But I would say that probably the most broad or the broadest definition of leadership would be one single word. And that word is, can you guess it? Influence. Influence, yeah. And so if leadership is primarily influence, then by that definition, we would all be considered leaders because we have the ability to influence those around us, maybe even those not directly around us. So you might be a leader, like a positional leader, we'll call it that. So say that, either in your job description or your title at work, somewhere in there, you are responsible for leading other people. These people report to you, maybe you give them performance reviews, that kind of a thing. Or you're a leader over a number of different levels of people. And so that's what we would call a positional leader. But then there's something that I might call more of a relational leader, for lack of a better term. So that would be someone who has influence through their relationships with others. And so, for example, you can probably influence your friends or your spouse or your family because you have relationship with them. So those are a couple different definitions of leadership, but I hope that you see that in that sense, to some degree, we are all leaders. And so in light of that, I think we can all glean from some of the learnings that we'll see in Deborah and Joshua and Moses and David. And I know it's going to be an awesome time, because not only am I going to try to share with you, but I would love for you to comment. I am not an expert on leadership by any means. In fact, I've probably learned more things the hard way than the easy way. And so I would love to hear some of your wisdom, some of your insight as a leader, especially, Christian leaders out there. I find that it can be really challenging. Leadership can often be lonely, and it definitely has its challenges. So I would love for us to learn together, and for you to share in the comments what you've been learning about leadership, or something that God has taught you, questions you have that we could interact with. That would be amazing. So I definitely want us to do that. As I was preparing for this particular post, I came across a great quote by John Stott, and you can read that on my blog post. But essentially, he talks about where the authority of leadership comes from. And he makes it clear that it doesn't come from a place of power, but of love. And definitely comes from a place of not coercion, but persuasion. And it's not about the power, it's about the humility. And so those were definitely words that caught my attention. And I think especially the idea of humility. And I think that's because God has used, maybe far more than anything else in my life, leadership to teach me humility. He has humbled me so many times as a leader. So hopefully we can learn together some amazing things about leadership through this series. So I hope you'll join me, and I hope you'll be interactive. I hope that you'll comment and share, and that we can really discover together how to be radiant, how to reflect God's glory in our everyday lives as we lead and influence those around us.